Hey there, it's Lenny McGill with the GlockStore Performance and Custom Shop. And today I'm in San Diego, and today I'm going to do something really unusual. Of course, this is the GlockStore, right? GlockStore. And you know me as the Glock guy because I've been doing Glock stuff for 30 plus years. And I love Glocks, but there's some new guns, in particular, a new brand, not a new brand, but a new gun that has just been amazing, really taking the country by storm. And it's the Sig, I know I said it, Sig P320, and it's available in a bunch of different flavors. And I've got one here in front of me. We've got some of our custom parts on it. Go ahead and look at it. This is the Sig P320. It's the X5 version, and it is the Legion version of the X5. And the X5 is the size. The Legion is the frame. The frame here is actually a tungsten infused polymer. So it has a lot of weight to it, which really helps dampen recoil. This gun in particular is used by my son in a lot of competitions, and you probably see him on some of our Instagram posts. It basically, there's like no movement whatsoever. Of course, he's a strong guy and he holds it well, but the gun just functions flawlessly. He loves it. It's got the Romeo, what is that, the 3 Max, which is the big window red dot optic on it. And he loves it. And I tell you what, he shoots it really well, and a lot of people really like this platform. There's a lot of neat things about this platform, which we'll talk about here shortly, that make it pretty spectacular. And that said, let me show you some of the other accessories we have here to look at. The big mouth magwell, of course. Boom. Extended magazine button. The takedown lever, we've modified it to have a kind of an aftermarket version that is a thumb pedal or gas pedal and thumb rest. So basically you operate it with your thumb right on top of that as you shoot. So you can really get a good strong grip on it. You can push down on it, and gives your thumb a place to rest. So these are really neat accessories. Obviously the magwell does what it's supposed to do, allows you to load magazines easily. The extended magazine button allows you to access that a little easier and drop magazines faster. The thumb rest, or gas pedal they call it, is designed to help reduce recoil, but also really give yourself a consistent space to mount that hand and to mount that thumb and to be in the same place, the same time every time you actually mount the gun and present the gun, because that will improve your accuracy and your speed. Because if you're in the same spot every time, you already know that when you come to full extension, the sights are lined up where you're looking. And because of that, you can have a lot of confidence to pull the trigger almost instantly without having to double check the sight. And that's how you get to be super fast. Now, inside we have our super heavy tungsten guide rod for this X5. This makes this gun literally just a flat platform, and it just cycles, boom, really easy. So I love this gun. I think it's really phenomenal. And you know, it's kind of the next level of gunsmithing or gun manufacturing. And I want to show you why, because there's something in here that's really unique that sets this P320 platform apart, and that is the fire control group is actually the firearm, and it's not the frame. It comes out of the frame. So many of you already have P320s, know that. A lot of people watching this may not have ever seen that, so we're going to go through that. And then we're also going to install and show you a competition spring kit for a P320 that will give you a better trigger and allow you to shoot faster and more accurately. So there's a whole lot of cool things going on here in this video. First and foremost, we of course will double check the gun's unloaded, and it is. Pull the trigger in a safe direction, and we have. And there's no ammunition on the room here. There's no ammunition on the table, no ammunition in the room, no magazines on the table that are loaded. You know, so I know that I can work on this gun without any chance of it going bang. Because I'm inside, right? You know, if I'm at the studio, the studio, I don't want to shoot here. I want to shoot in the range. Then I'd have magazines and all that. But here, no, of course. All right, so let's go ahead and talk about this spring kit real quick. The spring kit is really interesting. This is developed by my son Lenny. We've got Michel, the world-class competition shooter, world champion, should I say, competition shooter, who also is sponsored by Sig. So, you know, to be full disclosure. He's endorsing this product with us because he uses it. You know, Lenny developed it and he liked it so much. He said, "Hey, put that in my gun." So you know, he's using it. A lot of other people are starting to use it too. I looked at it and I thought, wow, it really makes a huge difference, and we'll show you why. But I'm going to show you how to install this. Now, the Sig is a great gun, right? Much more complicated than a Glock. So this is a little tricky installing this part, but I'll walk you through it. Hopefully you'll get it. Took me a little while to kind of get down into it. Here's what you're going to get in this competition spring kit. You will get the reduced power sear springs. You're going to get about 4 of these because these are so tiny you can actually lose those. Let me get rid of that and I'll put my hand back here so you can actually get a better view of those things. So they're tiny, and it's crazy how these little parts all come together to make a gun go bang. Still fascinates me. You're also going to get a reduced power trigger return spring, and trigger spring basically is what it is. And we'll show you how this works, but it is designed to help reduce the trigger pull and increase the reset. And then you're going to get 2 over travel buffers. And one is slightly larger than the other. This one's larger right here. You can kind of see the difference. And what that does is it stops the trigger. It's kind of a trigger stop. And depending upon how you want your gun set up and how your gun is responding, you'll pick either the large one or the small one. And I'll show you how that works once we get in there too. And again, it's our competition spring set for Sig P320 handguns. And that's what we're going to start. So let's go ahead and start with the first step, and that will be to go ahead and take the slide off. Now, a lot of people, you know, are not familiar with the Sig, but it's pretty simple to take the slide off. There's a takedown lever here. This is our enhanced takedown lever with the gas pedal or the thumb rest, right? So whether you have the thumb rest or not, you're going to go ahead and take that takedown lever and twist it down. So first, you want to lock the slide back. Slide is locked back. Twist this down. Now this takedown lever almost acts, in Glock terminology, as the slide lock, right? So it locks the slide on in place. Because once I take this down, there you go. You'll see it's all the way down. See that little half moon cut out right there? And that's where a pin will travel. And that's how you know it's loaded in. So now what we're going to do is we're going to let the slide come right off, and then we're going to walk this out a little bit more by hand, and it should come out a little easier. Bring it back up here. There you go. So what I did is I just half cocked it up and pull it straight out. Now it will come out. You got to just keep rotating it and find out where it's going to come out. It does have a flat spot on the one side. So by just turning this around and pulling, it'll kind of walk itself out. Okay, so there's the upper. And there is our super heavy tungsten guide rod. And it's in an uncaptured spring on this particular installation, so I'm not going to take it out because I don't want to play with it to put it back in. But that said, you can see our super heavy tungsten guide rod really gives a nice amount of weight on the slide itself, which helps reduce overall recoil. Okay, so I'll put this off the side because we're not going to work with it. We're going to work with the trigger control group, which is basically this entire steel piece right here. So if you notice, what's really cool about this particular setup is that the serial number of the gun is actually on that steel part. And that steel part is what is considered the firearm, which is brilliant because it comes out as one piece. Now to take it out, we're just going to go ahead and start from the top because it's locked into the back. You'll see this little tail that kind of has a slot here in the frame. So it kind of goes in and it just locks itself back into the back there, and then the top comes down. So we're going to go ahead and just lift this puppy right out. And it should come out like so. Okay, so here it comes from the front, and then I'm going to pull it out a little bit, and there it comes. So this, in fact, is the gun. Even without all the parts, that's considered the firearm. It does have a serial number, like I said, that shines through the little window. And what's really neat about that is that this 320 module is interchangeable into all the different frames. How cool is that? So if you don't like your frame, you can always change it out. And extra frames are available through our website, of course. And we do sell a bunch of them. It's a pretty neat little package. So this is the module itself. And what we're going to do is we're going to install the performance parts in lieu of the factory parts to allow us to get a better trigger pull, faster, lighter, crisper, less over travel, which will improve your shooting because you're not fighting the trigger as much, you're not manipulating the trigger as much, which has a tendency to disturb the sight picture. So that's the key. That's, if you remember that, if you can think about, long-range rifle shooters, they're looking for just a light trigger, because anytime you pull on the trigger and have to break it, you're going to disturb the barrel somewhat. There's going to be movement. And especially at a rifle distance, several hundred yards, any movement will really throw the shot off. But it does the same thing with a pistol. At 10 yards, 15 yards, 20 yards, there's really a lot of movement there, especially when you're holding the gun out here for a long period of time and trying to manipulate that trigger with your trigger finger and not have the barrel or muzzle move around. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is work on the over travel pin. And we've taken the whole thing out. The over travel pin is basically behind the trigger, okay? And that makes sense because as you pull the trigger back, it stops the trigger, right? You got that? So basically, it's involving this pin right here, which we're going to call the trigger buffer, over travel buffer spring pin. It's actually part of the Glock. You'll look on, or excuse me, the Sig. You're gonna look on this other side, and you'll see it's blocked by the trigger bar. All right, which is okay because I'm going to pull it out from this side. If you have difficulty getting it out, you can always take the trigger bar out, which we're going to do in the next step anyways. So I'm just going to go ahead and pull out the entire pin, and it comes straight out like so. And it's pretty loose because we worked on this gun several times. When you get it, it may be tight. More than likely it's tight. So you're going to maybe possibly tap it out from the other side, or really yank on it hard and it will come out. Just capture it like that, because once it rests in the frame, it doesn't go anywhere. So that's the piece that we're going to play with. And then what I'll do is I'll show you how this buffer works. The buffer goes over top of this pin to increase its diameter. And because it increases its diameter, it prevents the trigger from going back that much farther, which reduces the over travel. It's a little bit, but it makes a big difference because every time you pull the trigger, you don't have all that slack come back out and reset. And because of that, you can manipulate the trigger faster. Because of that, you can shoot faster. It's pretty simple. So there's two different types. This is the smaller version, and the larger version basically does the same thing. It goes right over top of this guy, this pin. Oops, let me go this way here. All right, and it goes right over top and just fits on like so. And then when we put it back in, it basically just rests like that, and the trigger hits that every time you pull the trigger, versus the bar itself, which is a smaller diameter. That's how those two pieces work. So I'm going to leave these right here for now because I'll put those in last. Or I could put that in right now too if I wanted, but I'm going to go ahead and wait because I'm going to do the rest of this. Now, if you wanted just that alone, that's one step, and you can put that in, and it's very simple. Okay, so our next step is going to go ahead and work with the sear springs, which reside in the back. So if we look at this piece, this fire control group, here are rails that the slide runs on. Here's the back of the gun. The barrel faces that way, down. Okay. So if I'm looking at the gun as you would be looking at it, I would say to myself, okay, over on this side, we've got the trigger bar. Right here is the trigger spring. The trigger itself is right here, and the trigger pin is right here. Now, before we take anything apart, I always like to look at it and say, well, how does it look before it comes apart? So that when I come back to put it back together, I kind of have an idea what it's supposed to look like. I'm going to tell you right here, this mechanism is a little bit difficult to, I guess, put in place. But once you figure it out, it's like, oh, I got it. It sometimes just takes a little bit more finagling because there are no, I guess what I'm going to say, pins that hold this together. This trigger bar is held in place by a post that intersects with a hole, but it's not a pin that goes all the way through. The trigger and the trigger pin are really one piece. So it's a little bit different, but certainly something to get used to. So again, we're looking at the gun this way. And let's go ahead and take off the trigger bar. And then we're going to go ahead and work with the safety, disengage the takedown safety lever. And that'll allow us to work with our both our sear springs as well as our trigger spring. Now, the trigger spring is kind of funky. It's captured into these two holes. So look in real close. There's a hole right there that captures the one leg. And then I'm going to flip it over just a little bit. And you'll see, hopefully, in here, there's another leg, another hole right here. There we go. There's kind of some light there, huh? And that captures the hook of the spring. So it's kind of a crazy system, but to disengage that, you have to push down. Now this thing is loaded, so when you push it down, you want to push it over, you want to make sure you hold on to it so it doesn't go flying across the room, because it has on me. There's your trigger pin. And again, there's two sides to it. There's an open leg, and then there's a hook leg. And the hook leg goes into the housing, open leg goes out. So now that we have that out, it's just going to pick straight up, and we're going to go ahead and take the trigger out. The trigger just comes straight out. And I want you to notice one thing here. What's really interesting is how the trigger and the trigger bar are not really connected, but they are connected only by that little post on the actual trigger. So if you look at that post right there, it intersects with the trigger like so. And that's what keeps it together. Okay, so we're going to put the trigger down, put the trigger bar down, and now we're going to go back to our sear, okay, because I've got all the parts out that we're going to change, and I'll put them back in a little bit here. So I've got our safety lever pin right here, and I'm going to go ahead and push it out from the other side. That will allow me to access the sear springs. Now they are spring loaded, so when this pin comes out, they may want to fly away, so just put your thumb on top and pull. And there we go. Well, luckily they didn't fly away. And now we can use our fingertip and grab hold of the little notch, and there are the two fangs, which are the two springs. Now they are captured onto a little nipple on the back side of that sear, and so you can just yank them off gently so you don't break them. And then we'll replace them. So I'm going to put one down, and here comes the other one. And this is when I'm going to start putting our new parts in. So there's the old parts right there. And here comes the new springs. And so again, we take one of these at a time and just pop them on that little nipple. Now these springs are tiny, so be very careful. All right, there we go. And there's your little nipple. Let's see if we can get in close. And can you see that? There you go. Let's get a little light behind it. So you see the two nipples there. The springs go on top of those. Now, I've heard a rumor that you could actually operate with one spring, but we're going to put both springs in. Now, these springs are reduced in power to give you a lighter trigger pull. So we'll come over here. Now, my finger's going to be all over this, so unfortunately, and my eyes are not as good as they used to be, so now I got to get it up here and look at it. And let's see if I can get these guys captured. There you go, captured one. That was easy. And I'll see if I can capture the second one here without disturbing the first one. Look at that, they're both on. So now all we have to do is we have to tuck them back in a little bit, make sure they clear. And that's it. And then I'll just play with them a little bit, make sure I've got the spring action I'm looking for. And those are the reduced power sear springs, which obviously, as you can tell by the word reduced power, should give us a better, lighter trigger pull. Okay, now we can go ahead and start to put this back together. And I can put my pin in right now. So this pin is going to go right into that big hole. And sometimes all these pieces, there's like 3 or 4 different holes. To line them up properly, it's always nice to have another punch and just put it on the other side. Just kind of get everything set and just push in as you go. And hopefully you'll find a home there and it will seat itself just like that. Now you see this bar is in the way a little bit, so I'm going to pull the bar up out of the way and push that pin in, and there you go. So we've installed the sear springs, excuse me, the reduced power sear springs. Next up is going to be the actual trigger spring. Now the trigger spring is also designed to give you a lighter trigger pull. This is probably the hardest thing that you're going to do with this whole operation. So there's a trick, and the thing you want to remember is it sits in the gun like so. So it's going to sit over here on this side. If the gun's pointing this way, here's the back of the gun. It's going to sit over here, and it's going to live all the way back in here like this. One of the things you'll see is there's the hole for the trigger pin. The other thing you have to remember is that it wants to live and it wants to seat itself so that this piece marries up with that little post. So that's the hardest part about this, is getting that to work there. Working a spring is not as difficult as seating that post into that hole. So the way you want to work this spring that we have found to be easiest is to actually turn the gun upside down, have your trigger bar kind of positioned in the way you want it to be, right? So it's going to end up here like so. Now we're going to flip it back up backwards. So if you notice what I did, I went and I just flipped it like so. Boom, boom. It's a big flip. And we're going to take our spring, which is right here. We're going to first take the hook side and hook it on the inside of that hole that sits on the fire control group. Inside. And then take the leg and hook it on the outside of this bar. So the outside's right here. It's very almost counterintuitive. You think, well, that doesn't make sense, but this goes like that. So then you end up with this configuration before you do anything. Now, hopefully you'll see that as I flip this over, like so, all the way down, then I start to build that spring pressure up, and then you can see where it's going to happen. It's going to end up seating itself. Now, we have found that you put it in the back spot right here just to kind of get it situated. It's not going to live there, but that's kind of just to get it started. So there it goes. Now here's our trigger shoe. It's going to go in. And now we've got to get that hole to line up with that detent. And it's ever so slightly off. So we want to just keep our trigger forward there. Oops. Well, now I've got it in the hole. And I think I got it there. So you felt me, I felt it and I could hear it catch on this side, but also more importantly, the trigger caught on this side. It looks like it's fully seated. So now it's kind of sitting in this position. I'm just going to go ahead and pull the trigger and get it and push it back in. So now I've got it. Well, it's not easy. I think if there's any technique, it would be to rest that there, get your trigger bar kind of lined up, put the flat piece of the trigger itself on top of the trigger bar so that the hole is just in front of that post, and then just work it in there and try to capture that. And then at the meantime, putting enough pressure so that you're able to seat the trigger on the other side of the frame. Because if you don't do that, it's not going to function. So two things are going on here. One, we have the spring pressure we're looking for, and you'll see our sear activating and coming back the way it's supposed to. Whew, okay, now, last one is pretty easy. Okay, this is the over travel buffer. And I'm going to go ahead and put in the smaller one right now, just because you can try either one, whichever one's going to work, the smaller diameter. And we have that here scheduled at 0.135 inches. The largest one is 0.155. It just slips right over top like so, as we showed earlier. Now the key is to do this simultaneously while it's inside this frame here. So to start this, what we're going to do is come over here on this side, and there's the hole. Okay, and I'm going to start it from here, from this side, which is basically left going into the right. So if the gun's pointing this way, this is the left side going into the right. And I'm going to drop this piece right on top of the post as it goes in. Now, so it's not hard, but it's a little easier if the trigger's not in, but I'm going to go ahead and do it anyways this way because I wanted to show you how to put all these other pieces in. And I will get it set up here right on top of that post properly, like so. Then I'll show you before I plug it in. Oops. And again, I've got some big fingers going to go in here. And again, I think I said earlier, it's a little easier if you do it with the trigger out. There we go. Now, one other way I can do it too is to, there we go. Okay. So here's what's happening. So you can see the over travel buffer right here, and there's your over travel pin, and I just gotta find a home for it. There you go. And you can see how it bottoms out, and that's it. And you can see what it's doing. It's actually intersecting with the trigger right there. Right there. That piece that we're talking about. Very simple. That's a simple little device, but took a while to develop that, to be honest. Okay, so there's our fire control group, and I've installed all the parts that we wanted to provide us with a lighter, crisper, better trigger pull. Let's go ahead and reassemble. I will now take the frame and put the fire control group into it. Like we had mentioned earlier, there's kind of a tail here, and the tail goes into a slot in the back of the frame. Kind of hard to show you, but I'll see if you can look down in there and see that little slot right there. So we're going to put it in like so. Come back in and go right down here and find that slot. There it is, and then we can push straight down. Now sometimes the trigger gets in the way, so you just got to move the trigger out of the way, push it straight down, and it just drops in, just like that. Now you're going to notice, okay, wow, it doesn't look like it seated itself all the way back there, and it didn't. So I can just take a little mallet and just tap it down. Boom. So this is what it's going to look like inside now. Now do note there is a flat spot in there, and that flat spot is going to correspond to the takedown lever. All right. So we'll go ahead and put our takedown lever in. And you'll see how it's flat here and it's flat there. It's going to go in that angle. So I'm going to go in straight here like so. And again, now the way you put this in is you just kind of twist it in there. Sometimes there's a spring in there that's fighting against, right? So it's not going to go in quite as easy as you'd like it to, but you'll just push it in, get it lined up. And then what we're going to do is we're going to kind of start it over there and then bring it all the way back around to its takedown spot. So now I've got it in the little notch there, little half moon. I've got it in its takedown position, back, forward. And you'll notice, if you see, what's really neat about this thing right here, there's your slide lock, basically, see that? When you rotate that, see how it opens up? The flat spot, this is what stops and keeps the slide on. So you can't put the slide on that way. You can't take it off that way, but you push that all around and the slide will go on and off. Okay. So slide onto the rails, and we're going to get caught a little bit. We're going to go ahead and bring it back, and we're going to lock it back. And now we're going to go ahead and close our lever. And now we can go ahead and let it forward. And there's a better trigger right off the bat. And it feels good. If you shoot it a little bit, it'll shoot even better. It'll just work itself in. The springs will work itself in. So not a lot of oil required on any of those parts. Really, the main thing with this gun is, you want to oil the rails. Perhaps the bird's eye that sticks up and runs up and down on the slide. But it's a great gun. I'm telling you what, I've seen my son shoot this, and he does a great job. I may have to start shooting this too, but I'm a Glock guy, right? But that said, this is the new competition spring set, endorsed by our buddy Michel, world champion, and now available here at the GlockStore. Even though it is the GlockStore, we do have Sig product as well. So if you see the GS, it's now Glock Sig. How convenient is that? I'm Lenny Jr. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.